So we're going to do some resisted isometric tests for biceps brachii, brachialis, and brachioradialis. All three RITs use the same setup. I'm going to have my partner standing. The shoulder joint is neutral. The elbow is flexed to 90 degrees. To target biceps brachii, I'm going to ask my partner to supinate because biceps brachii is a supinator. I'm going to apply pressure as she continues to keep her elbow flexed against my resistance. So my pressure is downward, and you can see biceps brachii contract. You can relax, thank you. For brachialis, I'm going to have the same setup, elbow flexed at 90 degrees, only this time I'm going to have her forearm pronated because brachialis has a relationship to the ulna. So here, again, I'm going to ask you to hold this position. I'm going to apply downward pressure. She will try to flex her elbow against my resistance, and I can feel brachialis contracting quite strongly there. And relax again. Lastly is brachioradialis, the handshake muscle. Shoulder neutral, elbow flexed 90 degrees. I'm going to keep the forearm neutral with regard to pronation and supination. I'm going to ask my partner to hold this position while I apply downward pressure. And you can see brachioradialis contract quite fully. And relax. Thank you. So the resisted isometric test for triceps brachii, sort of counterintuitively, you're doing it with the shoulder flexed. I have her shoulder flexed at about 45 degrees. I have her elbow flexed at about 45 degrees. I'm going to ask my partner to hold that position. I am going to try to flex her elbow and flex her shoulder further while she tries to extend her elbow and extend her shoulder against my resistance. So the muscle contraction is here along the posterior humerus, and I can feel the heads of triceps contract. And relax. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be doing the resisted isometric tests for the forearm pronators and for supinator. We'll start with pronator teres and pronator quadratus. Pronator teres is here starting at the proximal radius, going to the ulna. Pronator quadratus is here at the wrist, connecting both ulna and the radius. So we're going to start with our partner in a elbow flexed position. Supination stretches the pronator muscles. This is pronation. I'm going to give my partner a slight head start on pronation, and I'm going to ask her to hold that position. I'm going to apply resistance in this direction while she attempts to complete that pronation, and you can see pronator teres contracting here, pronator quadratus there, and relax. Okay. So for the supinator muscle, I'm going to have her elbow flexed. This allows biceps to stay out of the conversation. Supination, if you recall, is this direction. So I'm going to give her a little head start into supination. I'm going to ask her to hold that position, and I'm going to try to bring her hand in this direction into pronation, and I can actually palpate the belly of supinator here at the proximal forearm. And relax. Thank you. So RITs for the forearm extensors and the digit extensors. We're going to start with extensor digitorum communis. I'm going to bring my partner's wrist into slight extension. She has her digits extended, and I'm going to apply pressure here at the proximal phalanges of her digits. All right, I'm going to ask you to hold that position. I am going to try to flex that joint. So right here at the metacarpal phalangeal joint is where I'm applying the most pressure. You can see all of the tendons in her fingers come up as I do that. And relax. Then I'm going to do extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis. I can't really distinguish between the two, so it's going to be one test. The wrist is again in slight extension. I'm going to give her a little head start into radial deviation. Now I'm going to try to ulnarly deviate her and flex her wrist. So please don't let me move you. I'm going to ulnarly deviate and try to flex. You can see the contraction of extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis here on the forearm. And relax. Is that okay with your thumb? Okay. For extensor carpi ulnaris, same start, slight wrist extension, giving her a little head start into ulnar deviation. Now my goal is to radially deviate her and flex her wrist. So I'm going to apply pressure in this direction. Don't let me move you. And I'm going to try to do that. She is contracting against my resistance, and extensor carpi ulnaris is contracted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with flexor digitorum profundus and superficialis. I'm going to ask you to flex your wrist slightly. I'm going to ask you to flex your digits slightly. And I am going to put my pressure on the distal phalanges and try to extend your wrist and extend your digits. And that will contract that muscle. For flexor carpi radialis, a little bit of wrist flexion, a little bit of radial deviation. Now I'm going to try to ulnarly deviate and extend your wrist. And I can see that muscle contract nicely. And you can see the tendon pop at her wrist as well. Then for flexor carpi ulnaris, a little bit of wrist flexion, a little bit of ulnar deviation. I'm going to try to extend the wrist, and I'm going to try to radially deviate the wrist. And there, the muscle is contracting nicely along the ulna. Last resisted isometric test for this part of the body is palmaris longus. Palmaris longus cups the palm. So would you cup the palm for me? And I am going to apply pressure at the thenar eminence and the hypothenar eminence and try to open her palm up. And you can see that lovely long tendon of palmaris longus contract. And relax. So this is going to be the nerve tension test for the ulnar nerve. You're going to start with your partner supine on a table. You're going to flex their elbow. For the ulnar nerve test, you're going to hyperextend the wrist and radially deviate it. You're going to hold that position as you slowly bring their arm into flexion and hyperextend the wrist, flex the elbow, and you'll get a nice stretch for the ulnar nerve. The nerve tension test for the radial nerve. Starting again with your partner supine, the elbow is flexed. I'm going to flex her wrist and ulnarly deviate her wrist. Then I'm going to extend that elbow and slightly extend the shoulder joint to put tension on the radial nerve. So the median nerve tension test, you start with your partner supine. You're going to abduct the humerus about 110 degrees. You're going to keep the elbow slightly flexed. As you hyperextend the wrist and hyperextend the digits, then you can slowly extend the elbow, increasing the tension on the median nerve.